Hi everyone, welcome to the first video of 30 days of JavaScript. So before moving on to the topic and solving the question that is create hello world function, let's know a little bit about closures under which all the four of the question we will be solving. Getting a bit of a idea about closures will help us to solve these four questions very easily. So let's move on to the closures. Is a function that has access to the variable in the function that it is defined. So what it basically means is, if we have a function, we have a outer function and we are defining another function inside it. So whatever variable we are defining in the outer function, like we have defined name here, right? That variable can be accessed inside the inner function. Okay, so what is closure? Closure is a function that has access to the variable defined in the outer function even though the function has finished its execution. That is, if like we have a function here, right? And in that function what we have done, we have defined name as variable. Now this name has already been executed, right? And after this we have defined another function which is inner function, and we are trying to console log here, right? We are trying to console log the name here. And this inner function, the inner function has the access to this name, and this feature of defining a function inside another function which has access to the variable of the outer function is called closure. Okay, so this is very important function, or we can say important feature of JavaScript. And for solving the upcoming questions we will be using this closure. Now, as in this example, they have told that the inner function that we have defined is inner, and we are trying to access this name variable inside the inner function, and we will get the required output as John, right? We are displaying the name and we are getting the output as John. So how we are calling this inner function? We don't have to do any specific calling for this inner function. We just call this outer function, and inside that the inner function will be called on its own. So let's see one more example. Okay, so like if we have this count function called counter, okay, and what we are doing, we are defining just one variable called count to store the values whether it is incremented or decremented. Okay, so in order to increment, we have created one function which will be incrementing the value of count by 1, and we are decrementing, which will be decrementing the value by 1. It will do -1 and this will do +1. So now what we are doing, we are returning this function. So when we are defining more than one inner function, right, here we are defining two inner functions. So what we are doing, we are returning it as an object. Okay, so what we are doing here, we have the name of the function as increment and the other one is decrement. So in the returning order, what we are doing, we are returning it in the form of a an object. So increment function is returned and decrement is also returned, and here also we can, as get count is a key for another function which has the function as value and it is returning only the count. Okay, so when we have multiple inner functions, what do? We just we return them in the form of an object. Okay, so the thing is, now this counter value that we have, that the count value we have, it is same for the increment and decrement, right? So what I mean here is, if I am calling increment, okay, once I called increment and After that I call decrement. Okay, how we will call this? First we will be calling counter. Okay, so it will be like counter dot increment. I will write it clearly. So what we will call? We will be calling counter function, and after that we will call increment. Okay, so what this increment will do? This increment will increase the value of count by 1, right? So now count value is 1, and if just after this we call decrement, okay, we are calling decrement here, so it will decrease the value by 1. Okay, so now we have 1, it will become 0 here. The count value will become 0. So if we are storing this in variable a and we are storing this in variable b, okay, and we are logging the value of b, then we will get 0. Okay, so what I mean here by saying is, whether we are calling increment or decrement, since the count variable is shared by both of them, any changes made in increment will be carried on to the decrement also. Therefore, if we are calling here increment 2 times and after that we are calling decrement only once, okay, so what we are doing here, if I am calling counter dot increment and I am calling this again counter dot increment, so for the first one count value will increase to 1, right? Now after this count value will increase to 2, and when we will call counter dot decrement, it will consider the count value as 2 only, so it will decrease 1 in 2. So what we will get after this? After decrementing, we will be getting count as 1 here, and if we console log this value, what we will get? We will get the output as 1. This is only explained here, that if we are creating counter here, we are calling counter in the form of, and we are assigning in my counter. Okay, now we are calling increment 2 times. Okay, and when we are trying to log it in the console, so output displayed will be 2. After that, when we are decrementing the value, the output displayed will be 1. So this is the short detailed idea about the closures. Now we will see the questions on the lead code in the further videos.